Thank you so much. Inspiring words, and we appreciate your being here today. I've followed your career, and I have known you for quite some time, and I am thankful for your leadership. Thank you. So I'm going to ask a few questions, and then we're going to have time for some questions from the audience, so you might want to be thinking about that a little bit right now. So last year you launched a 6-month Connecting Communities tour. Can you first tell me about that, and then now you're back on the road, and you've been kind enough to join us in Mesa. What are you hearing from communities beyond the Beltway?
I am hearing from those places, regardless of where I go, tribal lands, rural and urban communities, that there are too many people who are involuntarily on the wrong side of the digital and opportunities divide. We have been paying close attention, and rightfully so, of the needs of rural communities with our universal service programs. But we can't ignore the fact that there are people in urban communities, that there are people in tribal, in tribal communities, that there are people, communities large and small, urban and rural and everywhere in between, that there are issues that they have that are preventing them from being the best that they could be. And so I thought it was important to get outside of Washington to hear from individuals, to ask them, quite frankly, if we're on the right track with our universal service construct. And what I heard was sort of mixed, that the goals, yes, we agree with them. Our schools and libraries programs on E-rate, who's going to argue that that's problematic? It's really making a difference in communities all over this country, making those learning centers accessible. Who's going to disagree that we should not help those healthcare facilities, those rural facilities in areas where medical options are limited, that the FCC should take a part in ensuring that they're connected with broadband so they can enjoy, in terms of imaging and electronic medical records and the like. Who's going to disagree? Well, who's going to disagree? I'll keep on the agreeable side until I get to the one disagreeable side. Who's going to disagree that in places where the investment is not currently made in some rural communities, with that high cost fund, with that all of us being connected is a benefit to each and every one of us. But we have some issues when it comes to Lifeline, and I mentioned that for a reason. But if we don't look at the affordability side of the equation, I think we're missing great opportunities. Infrastructure is important, and I will always be an advocate with you saying how can we be partners, public-private partnerships of investing in infrastructure. But if people can't afford the service, then my fear is that we have built an incredible technology bridge to nowhere. No one should be denied, and we should look at each element of that, of the delivery, of that pathway to delivery, to make sure that we're doing the right thing. So that's why that tour was so important, and I continue to learn from it and to be inspired by it.
Wonderful, thank you. So you, as you spoke, you listed several key priority areas: development, affordability, digital inclusion, and others. What does the FCC need from us, from local and state government leaders right now, and how can the audience be most helpful?
I believe on a number of fronts, including universal service, that you should demand more from us. And when I talk about universal service, I'll be more specific since I've met my friends from the Native communities. I believe that in places, when you look at Native communities, if you look at the numbers, 41%, if you look at the entire nation in aggregate, that 41% of them have challenges when it comes to broadband services in terms of what we consider high-speed internet. But that number jumps to about 68% when you go to rural native lands. And when you look at America, the entire nation, those types of disparities continue to exist. So we need to make sure that we're spending our universal service monies in a targeted manner. I believe, I'm going to go out and scare my advisor, that all of our programs need to take a sort of a means-tested approach. I continue to get a little uncomfortable when I know that your universal service dollars are going to Aspen, Colorado. I have no problem with Aspen, but I really don't think that they need a subsidy. And then the rest of places where there might be needs in some of our inner cities are being ignored. So I'm not trying to not go back to Aspen or not be invited back to Aspen. What I'm saying is we need to honestly be more critical, and you need to weigh in when it comes to spending our very limited dollars. And we need to look at other things that might not be, I guess you would say, organic for you. Now, one of the things that I've been talking about lately is just reasonable and fair rates when it comes to inmates. Those who are incarcerated, those families, I should be more precise, who are paying to keep in touch with them. And you might say, what does this have to do with anything in terms of open access? My answer to you is this. If people are paying exorbitant rates to keep in touch with their loved ones, and they try to do that as often as they can, not that often because it's too expensive, then they have less money to invest in themselves and their communities. They definitely will not be able to afford advanced communication services, and we all suffer as a result. So when you talk about what you can do on the local level, be advocates for holding us accountable, challenging us to make sure we're doing things in the most efficient manner, but looking at those things that are, I think, extracting or taking resources away from communities, like unjust and unreasonable rates, us not being more targeted. Looking at, going back to tribal, looking at the possibility of asking for a tribal broadband factor, or on a universal service side, asking for or demanding a bidding credit, for tribal in other communities of needs, or things that we could do, the FCC can do, that you can be partners and advocates for, of saying how can we incent more dollars to go to the places that are most in need. And I think innovative types of and targeted types of initiatives will help with that.
So we're going to take a couple of questions from the audience. So there are mics, one here and one here. If you'd like to step up and ask a question, that would be great. And I will, as we're waiting for someone to ask, I will mention that one of the things that we recommend with our members, we have 170 communities involved, is our elected officials sign on to letters that we send to the FCC, and we encourage them to write letters. When you agree or you disagree, it's not a hard process to do, and we highly recommend it because your voice needs to be heard, right? So we do have a question. Thank you so much.
Is this on? Yeah. Great. Good morning, Commissioner. Thank you very much for joining us today. We appreciate having you here. As an independent provider in rural parts of the U.S., and I consider Albuquerque to be part of the rural America, and then when you get outside of Albuquerque, it even becomes more rural. A long time ago, one of our folks in the state said that once we can solve connectivity problems in Albuquerque, it'll help solve connectivity problems throughout the rest of our state, whether that's for telemedicine or just simple lifeline type services, et cetera. We primarily focus in downtown Albuquerque. We have a community that's very old and very long part of our area, just south of downtown, called Borellis. It is a Hispanic neighborhood. It has been there for hundreds of years. It is a lot of low-income folks. As the owner of my company, I want to provide fiber services to those homes, and I want to provide connectivity. I want to provide that gigabit connection at $80 a month, which I think is an affordable number, and we have stuff that's even lower cost than that. My challenge is I can't get on the poles. And so this one thing I would love to see come from the FCC is very clear, bright line, and actively, quickly enforceable processes that would allow a provider like us or anybody else that wants to be able to be on the pole as a broadband provider to get on those poles and be able to get on that process. I've spent tens and tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees to argue whether or not I should be on the pole. So my question to you, ma'am, is what can the FCC do now to help further enforce the Rule 224 rules that have been conferred to us through Chairman Wheeler's net neutrality? It feels like those rules are now at jeopardy, and those rules are at threat of being demolished by the current leadership? Thank
So
you.
I'll be a little delicate in asking, since that is definitely a moving target, and I consider all of it relatively. So I will take some risk and answer from a personal point of view. I think the FCC should be more visible in the ongoing conversations as it relates to this. One of the things that our office did was to try to address what I said, some of the capacity challenges for some of the smaller municipalities. There are some areas that, or some jurisdictions that honestly do not have the personnel to process, especially when we're moving in a 5G world. I talked to Montgomery County, came in and say, goodness, we're not trying to slow things down, but we need help. There are issues here, literally, where we sit. And so I really think that we need to have a series of conversations about what all we should do to make sure that everybody wins when it comes to what when it comes to issues you pointed out. So I am hoping that that anything short of us exercising what I call the nuclear option, meaning that clear backstop authority, that we preempt the states. I don't think we should go to 0 to 60 when it comes to that. I think there's a series of conversations that we need to have to make sure that cities are adequately compensated, but that we have a pathway to ensure that the infrastructure that is much needed for our growth and evolution, that it is in place. I think that there is a win-win opportunity for us, and I want to be a part of that conversation. So I'm not dancing around. I want to face it head on in terms of exactly what it should not be. They're not apples to apples when you talk about small cells and the like and climate. They're not apples to apples, and nor should the compensation or the charge, I don't think should be the same. So let's, again, I think that should be part of your ask, that you should ask the FCC to be a proactive arbiter, or however we tackle that, the conversation. Deb, I'll be respectful of your time and get the questions in. And so let's talk offline. I'm with you. I think you shouldn't have to, that money should go in the ground and not paying for legal fees. I know you sit next to a lawyer, but that's okay.
And I will mention that Next Century Cities has done quite a lot of research on issues of pole attachments. We've got work on our website, and I highly recommend you take a look. We recently released a new policy agenda called Emerging Issues. Again, so lots of information there as well, and obviously we also share that concern because we actually have a panel today on that issue. And I think we have a question here, and this will be the last. Can I ask you to go right to your question, please?
And I'll try to be succinct.
Thanks.
I'm sorry.
Sure. Thank you for being here. My question is, I work for the Public Service Commissioner in the Southern District of Mississippi. Telecommunications companies are our #1 complaint. However, we do not have any oversight or any regulation of the service areas that they must provide to. We have oversight of the quality of service they provide, but as they're rotating people off of the old DSL copper lines, they are not building the broadband, the U-verse, and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And we have a lot of people who are without internet right now. Since you've worked on the PSC side before and now on the federal side, what connections between the FCC and the different PSCs in the state do you foresee happening that could potentially help us help our constituents?
So that's been, just as you mentioned, I was on the state regulatory side when our legislature spoke and basically deregulated, that side and took us out of the business, so to speak, with exception, just like you said, of quality of service issues, or if you just have a voice only. That's how it was when I left South Carolina. And to be honest with you, I was being defiant and kept my voice only so I could regulate myself. For a number of years. I don't know if I have a simple answer to you other than to say that we need to leverage this public-public partnership that we have with the PSC or the PUCs and ensure that the incentives in our universal service mindset is going towards, you won't get another USF dollar if you don't invest in advanced services too. It's not just voice only. And so we need to, again, be more targeted, continue to be targeted, and to really work with you about those donut holes we talk about where the investment is not being, realized. So, anything that we could do to, again, to challenge us as to what we're missing, what we're not doing, how we're not being a good partner to you, to make sure that those areas in Mississippi, my niece is in Starksville and Stark Vegas, going to school, to make sure that when she leaves that campus, that she's connected. I think that we need to do a better job of being partners to make sure that what we're doing is in sync with what you're doing, where your jurisdiction or regulatory, where your hands have been tied, that you have a regulatory backstop with us to make sure that you're realizing the objectives. It's not going to be easy. But I think that we just need to be more communicative in making sure that that our mutual goals are being realized.
Thank you. Last question.
Thanks. As you are using the Universal Service Fund to extend additional abundant and affordable broadband to the tribal communities,
Yes.
In the Southwest, we have a lot of small communities that are quite often adjacent to the tribal lands who are intensely underserved, and how can that Universal Service Fund be used to help benefit the rural communities of, well, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and other areas that are isolated because of their geography from the urban areas? So
the gentleman to your immediate right is probably one of the best persons in your room, your more immediate right in front of him. One of the best persons who was working in our Office of Strategic Planning to really speak about just that. What we need to make sure is that those places that are showing up as served on our map, that are not served, we need to have a robust challenge process to make sure that we have a true visual landscape as to where those disconnects or lack of investment, where it truly is. So more data, and more accountability, I think, and more innovative types of approaches. I talked with a young man, I don't see him right now because I have old eyes, but he talked about what's going on in Huntsville and how they're doing some things in terms of investing, and how everyone is being able to layer on top of that. Those types of approaches, recognizing and leveraging anchor institutions and the like, and making sure that those tentacles spread out to other communities. We just need to be more innovative, and we need to make sure that our maps are accurate so that our investment, our universal service dollars flow in that community. So, let's talk a bit more offline as to how we, with more specificity, speak with him about, what the FCC taught him also. And about some of the innovative projects that are going on. Because again, we can't go it alone. There's not going to be, I don't care how many billions of dollars of universal service investment that we have, each and every year. We're not going to, in an expedited way, connect America, to serve our communities as quickly as they want, if we don't think outside the box, if we don't challenge, internally and externally, and if we don't shift the paradigm to make sure that those communities that are without have short-term promise for being connected.
Thank you so much. Please join me in thanking Commissioner Clyburn. Thank you so much.